Hello, and welcome to Live Parkinson's, Live an Exceptional Life. I'm your host, Chris Custenbotter, and I've been living an exceptional life with Parkinson's for the past 13 years. The mission of this podcast is to help as many people as possible live a great quality of life after a Parkinson's diagnosis. Now, before we dive into today's topic, I just have a brief disclaimer to go over, and that is that this program is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat Parkinson's disease. Please follow the treatment plan prescribed by your physician. All the experiences shared on this program are based on my own personal experiences and are for educational purposes only. Now, let's dive into today's topic, which is cognitive effects of physical activity on Parkinson's disease. So, how can we prevent cognitive decline using physical activity? So, are you worried about cognitive decline after a Parkinson's diagnosis? Do you wish you had some exercises to help prevent cognitive decline? Then this podcast is for you. So, how prevalent is cognitive decline in Parkinson's? Well, according to the Parkinson's Foundation, in an article called Cognitive Changes, approximately 50% of people with PD will experience some form of cognitive impairment during the course of their disease. So, ideally, what we want to do is be able to prevent the cognitive decline so that you can maintain a great quality of life. Now, before we dive into the benefits of physical activity on cognitive function, I think it's crucial to grasp the cognitive challenges that many people with Parkinson's face. They can range from mild impairments to more moderate to severe. So let's take a look at some of the different ways that cognitive decline can affect our quality of life as a person living with Parkinson's. The first is executive function. So what do we mean by executive function? Executive function involves your ability to be able to plan, solve problems, and multitask. So, what does that mean? All right, let's take a look at planning and organization. I know that a lot of times when I was working, I had to develop plans on how I was going to get my work done. So I would be able to prioritize certain things and take those that are not a priority and put them farther down the list. So with planning and organization, you have a difficult time breaking down complex tasks into more manageable steps. So as my Parkinson's disease has progressed, I've had to learn to take things and break them down into small steps. I know when I go to the grocery store, for example, I used to just go and I could remember everything that I needed to get. Now I have to make a list, even if it's 3 to 5 things, because typically what happens is I'll make a list and I'll go to the grocery store and I'll forget my list. And then I'll try to remember what it was that I was supposed to get. And I can't remember. So then I have to go home and come back because I know I forgot a few things. The second piece of executive function is problem solving. I know in the past, I used to find it relatively easy to solve some problems or challenges that were in front of me because I would take a look at all the different aspects of the problem and then try to break it down and then come up with a solution. So it might be putting a gas grill together. I don't know if you've ever tried to put a gas grill together, but it seems like 1,000 pieces, and you have to be able to problem solve and be able to follow the directions and put that gas grill together so that you're able to use it to cook your food when you're finished. And it's always a scary thought when you put it together and there's 2 or 3 bolts or screws or washers and nuts left over. Then you think, uh-oh, did I put this together properly, or are these just extra pieces? So as part of executive function, a lot of times we find it a little bit more difficult to solve problems. And then the third part of executive function is task switching. And that's being able to switch between 2 different tasks. So maybe you're working in the kitchen and you're stirring a pot, and then someone says, "Could you go over and cut up some carrots?" Sometimes you might get distracted and not go over and cut the carrots, and then they'll say, "Where are the carrots?" And you say, I didn't know I was supposed to cut the carrots." So you have a lot of times difficulty switching between certain tasks, or you're writing an article and then someone asks you to help them do something. It's difficult for you to switch your mindset from writing the article to go and help them move a piece of furniture. The second aspect of or challenges that people with Parkinson's run into is attention and processing speed. So how quickly are we able to process information and use that to help us make judgments in our lives. And the first challenge that we would run into as part of that is called a selective attention. And that's maintaining focus on one particular thing and being able to push everything else out to the side. So maybe you're focused on writing a list for going to the store, and then people are talking at the same time. You need to be able to focus on what you're writing and be able to drown out the extraneous noise that you hear. A lot of times we have difficulty doing that. I know I do. I'll be making a list, or I'll be working on something, and I hear noises or I hear someone talking, and I'm easily distracted. And so that's one of the challenges that I have to work through. Another is divided attention, and that's when you're doing multiple tasks simultaneously, and you're trying to divide your attention between two tasks. And then finally, the third is processing speed. How long does it take you to be able to process information? I know as my Parkinson's has progressed, it takes me a lot longer to process information than it used to. I know sometimes my wife will ask me questions and I'll have to stand there for a couple seconds and really think through the answer. And I think that gets frustrating because I think she thinks that I don't hear what she's saying, but it's a lot of that is due to the fact that it takes me a certain amount of time to process the information and come up with an answer. And I do that a lot of times too when I'm in a conversation with someone, watching or listening to what they're saying. And then when it's my turn to talk, a lot of times it takes me a few seconds to formulate what I want to say. And a lot of times I even forget what I'm going to say, which I find embarrassing. So it's more difficult sometimes for me to process the information as quickly as I used to. And that can be very frustrating. A third piece is memory and learning. And memory is composed of, we have short-term memory, we have long-term memory, and then we have the ability to learn and retain new information. But working memory is, how easy is it for you to take that information and do with it what you want? So it might be, as an example, you need to do some math quick to figure out, is this bill right? And you're trying to use arithmetic, and you're using your short-term memory to say, okay, 4 plus 4 is 8, or do I need to carry one over, or do I need to subtract one from a column? It's those type of things. Long-term memory, and that's recalling past events from your childhood. And how easy is it for you to go back and pull up a childhood memory? I mean, sometimes it's easy. Things that were really positive in your life, you're going to go back and it's going to be a snap for you. You're going to have no trouble pulling that up. But other things, it may be more difficult. I went to my 15-year class reunion. I missed the first two, and there was a person in our class, and somebody said, "Oh, there's Marty." And I looked over, and I didn't remember Marty. Even though he was in a number of my classes, my long-term memory failed me. And then after a while, talking to people and then talking to Marty, it finally came back to me. So you can have issues with your long-term memory as well. And then learning a new information is a lot of times a challenge. It might take you a lot longer to learn new things. I know for me, I had difficulty where, for instance, I wanted to learn how to play guitar, and I had to start measure by measure. So I would learn to measure, and then once I grasped that, I would move on to the next measure. So what I found as my Parkinson's has progressed is that I have to break things down into its smallest pieces and then build on it from there. So that's one of the challenges that you run into with cognitive decline. Another is visual spatial skills, and that is taking visual objects from your or shapes from your environment and making decisions about it. So, for instance, one of the challenges is judging distance and proportions. So you're driving in a car, and in the past, you see a car stop in front of you. You know, you have to put the brakes on, and you can judge the distance. If you have cognitive decline, it makes it a little bit more difficult to judge those distances. And you may be pulling your car into a parking lot and you think, oh, I've got plenty of room. And next thing you know, you're scraping the side of the car because you didn't properly judge the distance. So sometimes you have trouble with judging portion sizes as well. The second is recognizing objects or patterns. Can you see if you have a group of things that have a similar pattern? Are you able to recognize the pattern? If you have cognitive decline, it makes it difficult for you to be able to do that, to recognize that there's different patterns that you may be able to say, oh, I don't have to do this, because you can see that the pattern keeps repeating itself over and over again. Another one is language and communication. This is one I have a lot of difficulty with at times, and I think my wife and maybe my family would agree. And that is with language and communication. Word finding and fluency is my first challenge. A lot of times I'll be in a conversation and I'll just pause because I can't find the word. It's on the tip of my tongue, but for the life of me, I can't come up with the word. So sometimes I have difficulty when I'm in a conversation expressing myself because I'll forget what I'm going to say, or I get tangled up with words, and that gets very frustrating, and it could be embarrassing depending on if you're going to let it bother you. But I think most people understand that if you have Parkinson's, that there's going to be times when you hesitate, or you lose your train of thought, or you lose the words that you're trying to come up with. Another one is voice control, and that is typically a lot of people with Parkinson's, their voice becomes softer as the disease progresses. I know I went to speech therapy, and one of the things that I learned was I think I'm talking at a normal level, but yet people kept saying to me, "Can you repeat that? I couldn't hear you." And after doing it 2 or 3 times, they become frustrated and you become frustrated. So what I learned as part of speech therapy is I almost have to yell. They gave me the example of, imagine you're standing at the top of the stairs and you're yelling down to the person below to let them know what you're talking about. And you might think in your mind it's yelling, but it's actually coming out as normal conversation. So that's one of the things that I learned, is that with a soft voice, you have to consciously make sure that you're increasing the volume of your voice when you look and you don't think people understand what you're saying, or they don't hear you. It might not be that they don't hear you. It's just that your voice is so soft that they might ask you to keep repeating yourself, which I've found myself doing time and again. So, and then the third part is nonverbal communication. You may have heard of the Parkinson's mask, where you lose the expression on your face. And that causes people to make judgments sometimes and look at someone with Parkinson's and say, why are they so angry all the time? Well, it's not that they're angry. It's just that the muscles in their face make it more difficult to smile, and it changes the whole visual and body language perception of the person. So even though the person may feel happy, they may be really enjoying the day, but their facial expression doesn't show it. A lot of people take that as, wow, they're angry. Why are they angry all the time? And that's not the case. So that's one of the challenges that we have to overcome with Parkinson's. Now that we've talked about all the challenges and the bad things, let's focus on the good stuff. And that is, what are the benefits of physical activity? Because there's a lot of different benefits, a lot of great benefits that physical activity is going to provide in terms of helping you or maintain your cognitive function and help prevent cognitive decline. So let's start with the first one. And we talked about this in podcast number 3, and that is enhancing neuroplasticity. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to the third podcast and you're saying, what is neuroplasticity? Well, it's a big word, but essentially what it means is it's your brain has a remarkable ability to take and reorganize and form new neural connections and help you learn new things. So in terms of physical activity, let's say for balance, I'll give you an example with balance. And one of the exercises that I like to do on a daily basis is I stand on one foot and I lift my other foot, and then I step forward but without touching the ground. I bring it back. I step to the side without touching the ground, bring it back, and then I step back without touching the ground and bring it back. Now, because I've done it repeatedly over every day, my brain starts to make these neural connections and say, oh, I've seen this before. We can do this. So it's really helped to improve my balance. Same things in terms of strength. If you're doing dumbbell curls every day, or not every day, but let's say you do dumbbells 3 days a week and you use a particular form and you do it exactly the same, your brain starts to say, I recognize this, and it builds these neural connections to help you do it almost automatically. You heard of muscle memory. So your neuroplasticity enables you to learn something new by building these neural connections. And then once you have it down, it seems to go very automatically. So it helps facilitate that whole process. A second benefit of physical activity on cognitive decline is dopaminergic system modulation. Now that sounds like a mouthful. What does that mean? Well, we all know that Parkinson's, one of the main causes of Parkinson's is the loss of dopamine. And dopamine is involved in two things. It's involved in helping you move. So when you have less dopamine, that's when you have the motor symptom problems. You have the tremors, the bradykinesia, the slowness of movement. And then it's also involved in the pleasure center. So for instance, dopaminergic agents that mimic dopamine they don't actually break down to dopamine, but they mimic dopamine. One of the side effects of those is they can cause compulsive behaviors such as gambling, overeating, those type of things. So knowing that dopamine is going to do those two things, one of the benefits of exercise is that it increases the amount of dopamine released. So exercise is going to stimulate the release of dopamine, and that's going to help counteract some of the depletion that we have. So by helping to boost the dopamine, it's going to help with our motor symptoms. So if you're out there and you're doing a yoga class or whether you're swimming or you're cycling, you're really enhancing your ability to stimulate the release of dopamine, which is going to help you in the long run. And you should notice a modulation in your symptoms, especially your motor symptoms. And the other thing it's going to do is it's going to help improve the signals or the transmission with the dopamine receptors. So exercise is so important in helping you with your motor symptoms and your cognitive ability. Now, one of the things that's really I find important to do is to incorporate both exercise and cognitive function at the same time in the same exercise. Let me give you an example. I gave the example of balancing on one foot. Well, what I might do is I might balance on one foot and do this exercise that I described before, or maybe I just want to stand on one foot, but I'm going to say the months in reverse, or I'm going to count to 60 by threes, or I'm going to spell a word forward and backward. So I'm testing my cognition at the same time I'm working on my balance. So that goes along with the neuroplasticity. So if I can incorporate both exercise and the cognitive piece together, I'm going to be that much better off. So think when you do some of the exercises, maybe you're working out with the trainer, or maybe you're just getting together with friends, whether it be walking, whether it be riding a bike, practice doing some cognitive exercises at the same time. And I gave you a few there: spelling forward and backwards, counting, subtracting numbers. So start at 100 and say, I'm going to subtract by sevens, and see how far you can go. So those are some perfect examples of how exercise, by managing the dopamine release, can really help benefit your cognitive function. Benefit number 3 is improving cardiovascular health. Very vital for ensuring that your brain receives the adequate supply of oxygen and nutrients that you're going to need. One of the benefits of great cardio health is enhanced blood flow. Exercise promotes more blood flow, and that's essential for keeping your brain and your cells functioning efficiently, as well as your neural connections. And then another thing it does is it helps reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, which can be associated with cognitive decline. So it's important that you get some aerobic exercise, and some of the examples would be cycling, swimming, boxing, dancing, walking. All those are aerobic exercises, and they're good for your cardiovascular health, but they're also good for your brain health. So it's important that you make sure that you try to get the cardiovascular exercises in, several times a week. I usually try to do at least 5 days a week, but if you can only do 3 days a week, 3 days a week is better than no days a week. But again, while you're doing these, make sure you try to do some of the cognitive exercises in your head that we just discussed. Another benefit is stress reduction and mood elevation. Physical activities had effects on helping you reduce your stress levels. The exercise triggers the neurotransmitters like serotonin and norepinephrine, which help regulate your mood and alleviate stress. So if you're stressed, you're going to have a lot more difficulty with cognitive solving problems, or coming up with solutions, or even having conversations. So stress has such a detrimental effect both on our health and our mental health. It can cause anxiety and depression and a whole host of other things. So exercise is going to help with your both physical and your cognitive functioning. And it makes you feel good about yourself as well. That's another benefit of your mood. You exercise, and when you release those neurotransmitters, you feel good. Hear runners talk about the runner's high. They feel good after you exercise because you're releasing those mood enhancing neurotransmitters. So make sure you exercise as much as possible, because it is a great way to help slow the progression as much as we possibly can. And I find exercise was one of the four strategies that I talked about, but it's so important in helping to maintain a great quality of life. And finally, that number 5 is cognitive reserve and resilience. I talked about resilience in podcast number 2, and that's the ability to overcome challenges. Even though you have a lot of headwinds in your way, you can still come up and say, I can overcome this challenge. And then when you're done with the challenge, you feel really good about yourself. With challenging cognitive function, you want to come up with activities that require problem solving and memory retrieval. As part of physical activity, it could be some other things too. It could be take a water aerobics class. You have to concentrate on the moves. So if you're doing complex moves as part of the aerobic water exercise, then you're stimulating your cognitive function as well. That's going to help prevent the cognitive decline as well. So those are the benefits of physical exercise on helping with cognitive function. But what are some strategies that we can use to help prevent cognitive decline in Parkinson's? The first one is aerobic exercise, which I just touched on just a few minutes ago, but it's shown to have significant cognitive benefits for individuals with Parkinson's. And you want to make sure that the activities that you're doing are increasing your heart rate and your breathing, and include things like brisk walking, cycling, or swimming. You're probably asking, well, how long am I supposed to do these for? Well, aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity per week. You think, oh, wow, that's a lot of aerobic activity. Well, you can break it down into smaller, more manageable sessions. If you want to do 30 minutes of aerobic exercise 5 days a week, that gets you your 150 minutes. So there's several different ways you can go about it, but that's the goal, is to try to get 150 hours where you're getting your heart rate up and you're breathing up every week. Now, again, it's important, and I talked about this in one of my other podcasts, is that in terms of exercise, pick activities that you like, because if you don't like it, you're not going to do it. And also try to vary up some of the exercise programs that you do. So all you do is walk, maybe go to a yoga class, maybe go to a Zumba class, go to the pool and swim, or take a water aerobics class. So try to vary up some of the activities that you do, because number one, it's going to keep you more interested too. Because even though you like walking and you say, I love to walk, after a while you might start to tire of walking, and you could easily talk yourself out of it. But if you have varied exercises, and again, I always recommend group fitness classes, because you have the motivation and the camaraderie from the instructor and the participants in the class. So I think that's a key piece as well. Number 2 is strength training. And that's vital for maintaining your muscle strength and muscle mass and overall physical function. You need strong muscles to help, especially a strong core, to help prevent falls, because falls are devastating. And people that fall a lot of times can have some devastating injuries and end up in rehab facilities. And we don't want you to be in a rehab facility. So as much as possible, you want to incorporate strength training into your cognitive function program as well. And you want to focus on the big muscle groups: your chest, your arms, your leg, and your back. And remember, start out small and gradually increase. If you haven't done strength training before, and then all of a sudden you say, well, I'm going to go pick up some weights and start strength training, and you go crazy on the first day, I can guarantee that you're going to be so sore that you're not going to want to pick up the weights after that. So please start out slow and gradually increase in intensity as you do that. A third key piece is balance and coordination exercises. They're going to help you reduce the risk of falls. And there's a lot of different activities you can do for balance exercise. The nice thing about balance is you could do those at home yourself. You can go onto YouTube or just do a Google search and you'll find all kinds of different balance exercises. In fact, if you go to my website, liveparkinsons.com, I just did a recent article on the 10 best balance exercises to help you out. So you can always go there and check that out as well. But exercises like yoga or Tai Chi are great ways to work on balance. I do several classes. I do what's called Soul Fusion. I talk about that's a mixture of balance and Pilates and strength. So it's a combination class. So that's another way to get your balance exercises in. But when you do balance, you want to make sure that you're using slow and controlled movements because they're going to help you enhance your balance and coordination. And then you want to include functional movements as well. So you want to be able to practice stepping forward, walking backwards, stepping up on something, reaching for things, stepping to the side. Because a lot of times I have two boxer dogs that we adopt and they're great dogs, but a lot of times, they'll come up and stand beside me. And what I have to do is I turn quick and I don't realize they're there. I have to be able to step over them. So I always practice side steps as a way to work on balance. So make sure you include those in there as well. Another is mind body practices. And we talked about meditation in one of the exercises, and essentially that's focused breathing. So that's going to help with your cognition too. When you can slow your mind down and focus on your breathing, it's going to help you reduce stress and it's going to help with letting negative thoughts come into your head and just recognize them and let them pass through. So deep breathing techniques and relaxation are really going to help reduce stress, which is important. And then number 5 is social engagement. And that is one of the keys to maintaining a great quality of life and maintaining your cognitive function. Because when you can get together with others, you have to be able to interact with other people. And you're using your cognitive function to do that. You're using short-term memory. You're using problem-solving skills based on what they're asking you. You're using your focus. You're using attention. You need to be able to listen to what people are saying. So social interaction is going to be one of the keys to help you maintain your cognitive function and prevent cognitive decline because of using multiple cognitive skills to be able to interact with other people. And then also it gives you a sense of purpose as well. If you haven't had the opportunity, my third podcast is all about the benefits of social interaction and helping prevent decline in Parkinson's disease. So that would be a great opportunity to have check out. But one of the best ways to do it is you can join groups or classes. Like I said, I highly recommend group fitness classes, but there's other classes out there as well. There's art classes, there's dance classes, volunteer and join clubs. There's all kinds of clubs out there. One of the things you can volunteer with, some people volunteer at the food bank. Some people volunteer to be a big brother, big sister. So there's a lot of different activities that you can do out there to really enhance your social engagement, but keep your mental and cognitive function really sharp and help prevent that cognitive decline. And then the last part of that is cognitive training. Make sure that you're participating in activities that really test your cognitive function. And those include puzzles and brain games. It could be jigsaw puzzles. It could be, if you like math, I talked about Sudoku in the past. Other things too, where you get both social interaction and testing your cognitive function is chess. Chess, backgammon, Scrabble. All those are great ways to test and keep your cognitive function sharp while at the same time maintaining some great social interaction. And then again, I talked about learning something new, learn a new hobby or skill. Maybe you want to learn how to paint, whether it be watercolor, oil painting. I mean, I'm only good at finger painting, but maybe it's learning how to play a musical instrument or learn a new language. We talked about that as well. Maybe you want to learn Spanish or Italian or whatever it happens to be. But all those things are going to test your mental cognition, and you're going to have to use a lot of the different strategies, whether it's short-term memory, attention to detail, problem solving, and focus. So cognitive training is so essential. And again, if I can stress that you incorporate cognitive function into all your exercise activities, it's really going to help you go a long way in helping to prevent cognitive decline. So let's just recap the strategies for helping to prevent cognitive decline using physical activity. The first one was aerobic exercise. And again, you want to try to get 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week, and then you want to vary your exercises. Talked about strength training and why it's so important. Again, focusing on the core and the major muscle groups. A strong core is going to help you with your balance, and keeping your muscles strong is going to help as well. Number 3 was balance and coordination exercises, and they're going to help you the risk of falls. And nobody wants to fall. And the more that you can practice your balance on a daily basis, and you might even practice standing on one foot while you brush your teeth. That's a good way to focus on balance as well. But balance and coordination exercises are key. I do those every day for 10 to 15 minutes, and it's really helped my balance. So please make sure that you include balance exercises in there as well. And they're also going to help your cognition too, because I do both. While I'm doing my balance exercises, I'm testing myself with a lot of those things we talked about: counting backwards, spelling, doing that alphabet backwards. That's a fun one to learn as well. So all those. And then I talked about mind-body practices. I talked about meditation to help reduce stress levels. That's going to help with your cognition as well, because less stress, less anxiety and depression, and that enables you to use your brain a lot better. And then social engagement was a key. And again, that's really going to help. And in terms of social engagement, remember I said group fitness classes or any kind of class where you're using a lot of the different cognitive functions and using exercise at the same time. Dance, ballroom dancing. Some people take ballroom dancing. That's a great way to exercise and test your cognition. Zumba classes, anything where you have a lot of different complex skills is really going to help. And then finally, the cognitive training, and that's engaging in activities where you're using puzzles, where you're learning new things like a hobby or skill. So those are the different activities that are going to help you with cognitive decline and preventing cognitive decline using exercise. So I hope you found this podcast beneficial, and I hope to see you on a future podcast. But before we leave, I request that you please visit my website, liveparkinsons.com. There's a lot of articles on there that I spent time researching to help people live a great quality of life. And that's my mission, is to help people live a great quality of life. And if you want to learn about the 4 strategies that I use to help live an exceptional life with Parkinson's for the past 13 years, I do have a book available on Amazon. It's called Spectacular Life, 4 Strategies for Living with Exceptional Life with Parkinson's, My Journey to Happiness. And I talk about my path, and I talk about 4 strategies that I use that hopefully will be beneficial for you as well. But, please visit me on the website and sign up for the free newsletter. And I look forward to seeing you on future podcasts, and I really appreciate you listening. Thanks again. See you next time.